Hello everyone, this is Eva and you're with Emma Butin.
Hi.
So you're watching 10 by 10 lessons with Emma Butin and Eva. So for popular demand of readers' questions, we decided to dedicate this chapter to answering your questions. So we have several questions from IT Donga readers. So first question, we have a question from nickname guest 1. There's a point of view where I cannot agree. It's matter of sales after all. What you tell us may be true for early stage companies. But there cannot be a company that can sustain without sales. This model is possible only until when investors allow it. It says that Twitter has trouble in IPO, which means it is ultimate goal for them to make profit after all.
Guest 1, thank you so much for the question that you sent and for the link to the article about Twitter. The article talks about how Twitter is growing and has sales about $400 million last year and would like to do an IPO of about $10 billion. Other sources, by the way, say it may even be $15 billion. Investors, though, are very scared because Twitter also reported losses. They said that their operating income was at loss because their expenses was much higher. That means that once they do an IPO, analysts can take the industry multiplier and assign it to their losses. And that means that it will impact their valuation. Now, once they do an IPO, this already goes to the entire public because you buy stock as a public according to a $10 billion valuation. But if the analysts decide that the Twitter losses will actually influence the valuation, after the IPO, the value of the company can decrease and a lot of people can lose a lot of money. So you're absolutely right that this is all about sales. And this is all about sales right now because Twitter announced that they would like to do the IPO. Once they go IPO, this will be an industry multiplier times the amount of sales. That's why they have the pressure right now to increase their sales. If they haven't been announcing that they will do the IPO, then they would have a little bit more time to increase their sales. But once they announce, they understand that the valuation of the company will depend on the number of sales. And that's what they're doing, recruiting a lot more users around the world in order to very quickly increase their number of sales right now. This is a little bit similar to what happened with Facebook when Facebook went IPO. Facebook wanted to do the IPO with a very high valuation, and then the shares dropped right after it went public because the analysts were predicting that the sales that Facebook has would not reach the expectations. So this is a bit similar to what is happening with Twitter, and people are waiting to see what the analysts will be saying that the company will be worth so that we as a public would know whether it's good for us to buy the share or not once Twitter goes IPO.
Second, we have IT Donga reader's question from nickname Caramel. First, if we have high valuation of the company, how do we connect it to sales? Even if we have high valuation, there is no guarantee that we'll have good sales without business models. Second, why do we have to care about valuation when we want to monetize from users at certain points to make sales?
Caramel, thank you for your questions. Those are very valuable questions. What is happening in the startup industry scene is precisely this: when should we monetize? So in order to make that decision, let's take a look at it mathematically. Okay? Supposedly that you have 100,000 users and you think this is big enough because this is great, 100,000 users. Now I would like to monetize them. If you're thinking about a business model that's focusing on monetizing your users, you have to consider the industry numbers. The industry numbers tell us that you can monetize between 0.5 to 1% of your users. 1% is usually the maximum. It is a very high number. So if you take your 100,000 users, and let's say that you are able to monetize 1% of them, that means that you will only be able to monetize 1,000 users. 1,000 users, and let's say you can monetize them for $2 a month which is also a lot depending on the business, then you would get $2,000 a month. Now think about it. Is it okay for you to get about $2,000 a month? Or is it valuable for you to keep on growing? Because if you keep on growing and you know what the asset is, then the company can be worth a lot more than the income of $2,000 a month. And when you decide to monetize, this is the first thing that you have to consider. The other thing that you can consider is monetizing not your users directly, but around your users. Business models that do not directly associate it with monetizing your users can actually be a lot more valuable for you. If we take a look on 100,000 users, we can still continue our growth, but we can monetize around them. Around them means partnerships, B2B deals, and even ads. And this is very important because if you find a way to monetize around your users, you can still continue your growth, but still you can see what type of money or what type of income you can generate around it without influencing your growth. This is why investors in Korea and in Israel ask you, what is your business model? They want to see that you understand the growth of the company, and when it comes to valuation, what is the business model that you will choose? Because every business model that you choose has a direct impact on the company's valuation.
Third, Pinterest tries to increase its sales by connecting with other corporates. I want to ask your opinion. Is this right time for them to build their business model, or should they still focus more on gaining more users?
Your question about Pinterest is right on the money. The reason is that Pinterest is now increasing their sales and they're monetizing. What's important to see about Pinterest is that they're monetizing around their users. They're not monetizing their free users in order not to impact the growth. So they're doing some e-commerce and B2B and partnerships, and this is what we can learn from them. They chose a business model that is B2B mostly in order not to impact the valuation and not to monetize their free users.
Emma, so as early stage startups, what should we consider?
So as startups in early stages, what we have to consider before going to investors is the roadmap that we want to present to investors. If we're presenting them with a business model as of day one, focusing our energy on sales, this is a no-brainer. If you would like to focus on user growth, then present to investors your asset, where it is that you are the most, the biggest, the largest, the most expert in, because then the investors understand the asset. The investors will understand the company value that you're building. And once they understand the value, it would be easier for them to understand how it is that you're growing it and that the business model will come in along the way. If you cannot fill in these blanks, then the company value is not really understandable to investors. And that's why they usually tell you, well, grow your company and come back. We really want to draft a roadmap and focus on our biggest asset. That will give everybody clarity. So what's important to realize here, that if you're approaching investors and your roadmap shows growth, it's really important to show the asset, and the asset has to be very clear. Large investors understand that when you want to be the biggest and the most at something, you need time. Sales do not happen over time. If we take a look at Waze, the Israeli free GPS that was acquired by Google for $1.1 billion. If we look at Twitter, if we look at Instagram, at Shazam, we understand that large investors give them time to grow because then they will be the biggest and the most and the best. In order to do that, your asset, your value needs to be clear. It has to be a few words that you fill in the blank. If you do that, then sales at early stages usually are not that important because you can monetize when you're the biggest. But again, remember your asset and how to focus on your asset and show growth on your asset.
Emma, thank you for your explanation.
Sure.
So what's the chapter 7 about?
Well, unless you have many other questions, chapter 7 will be about your business plan and what investors learn about you and know about you through the numbers in your business plan.
So thank you so much for watching and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.